Welcome to the Franchise Woman Podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged. I'm Rebecca Monet, CEO and Chief Scientist at Zorkel Profiles, along with my co-host, community advocate, speaker, author, and entrepreneur, Tracy Kawa. We have a very special guest today with us, Kelli Schroeder. Kelli earned her Bachelor of Arts from the University of Alabama in Public Relations and Spanish, as well as an international MBA from EAE Business School in Barcelona and a certificate of franchise management from Georgetown University School of Continuing Studies. Today, she is the VP of Franchise Development at WellBiz Brands. WellBiz Brands is a category leader in experience-based businesses that change lives. With 5 separate franchise brands, Amazing Lash Studios, Dry Bar, Elements Massage, Fitness Together, and Radiant Waxing, they have more than 900 locations. Kelli, I'm so excited you could make some time for us today. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, Rebecca and Tracy. Really thrilled to be here. I love your podcast.
Oh, that's so sweet. I love that. Thank you. So I would love to kick this shindig off by finding out more about this passion that you have for travel and how that got started.
Yeah, so, ever since I was a little girl, my mom and my dad, always took the time to travel with my brother and me. And from a very early age, I think I was 5 or 6, I remember being on the airplane with my parents and my mom asking, what do you want to be one day when you grow up? And I told her, Mom, I want to be a stewardess. And she said, No, Kelli, you want to fly the airplane. And I found that to be very memorable and funny because they've always challenged me to go more than just reach beyond the stars and to have curiosity. And I love travel so much that that was the first thing that came to mind when asked, what do you want to do with your one precious life? And that has kind of really woven in my whole experience. And growing up and my passion for travel. I was 11 when I went to Nicaragua, first time outside of the United States, and built a house for underprivileged family in Managua. And it really was a transformative experience. And since then, I've been able to travel to 131 countries and open businesses in about 60 of those. So it's something that really motivates me.
Crazy. Okay, I want to back up a little bit. Um, this Nicaragua trip, if I recall correctly, that was a mission trip. Is that right?
Yes.
And tell me how that affected your mindset and how you saw the world.
Absolutely. So first of all, I was challenged to raise like $5,000 to be able to go on the trip, and I was 11 years old at the time. And so that was a huge feat in itself, and it taught me a lot about hard work, raising the money, really getting behind a passion and casting that vision to other people. So people could say I was already in franchise sales before I knew it. And getting there on site and building this house for this family, they literally before lived in a landfill. They literally lived in a dump. And the family was about 25 people. And we built this 3-bedroom, very basic house for them. Went and bought the material, hauled up these 20-pound cement bags up the mountain, did everything manually. And it took us a couple weeks to build this house. And it was a lot of like blood, sweat, and tears. And it was so rewarding to be able to give that to the family, and also to just reflect on how grateful I was to be living in America and to have a roof over my head and in abundance that a lot of people in that country and a lot of countries around the world, people just don't have the privilege to a good quality of life or access to basic needs.
That's exactly what I was sitting here thinking, being this kid, literally with an ability to raise $5,000. And then that same kid helping a family that didn't even have a house. Like just the juxtaposition alone.
Mm-hmm.
Like how did that alone affect your mindset? Just that comparison, how did that affect your mindset as a child?
I think it just taught me that you can do anything. It doesn't matter what your age is. You just have to have a dream. You have to have a heart and a conviction and a passion behind it. And if you go all in on yourself and be true to yourself, there's going to be people that God or the universe, whatever you believe, puts in your pathway to help you achieve your goals. And that anything is possible. And after I went on that trip, I was like, there is so much of the world to see, and there's so much impact I want to make, and I just got to get started.
Yeah, chop chop. I'm 11 years old. I don't have forever, right? Kind of thing. But
Exactly.
it's so fascinating to me, Kelly, that you had to raise this money. It wasn't to buy a bike, right? Or to go on a ski trip. It was to get you to a place where you could then help others have a better life. And it was so fulfilling and transformative that it kind of has basically affected everything going forward, right? So when did all of this travel start at that point? You're 11. Are you continuing to travel with your family? And then when did you start to do some of, the business things, the social entrepreneurial things?
Yeah, so I definitely the travel bug officially bit me when I was 11, and we would travel internationally with my family a good bit, and also a ton around the United States doing camping and going to state parks, and always just having a zest for the journey, not the destination. So it's all across the US and internationally. I would say there was a pivotal turning point for me when I studied abroad in college. So I was majoring in Spanish and PR, and lived with a family in Madrid, and really wanted to go back and pursue my international MBA because I knew that I wanted to do international business because of my love for travel and my passion. But I wanted to go get my MBA in a place where I knew I would be one of the only Americans and there would be so many other nationalities. And the thing is, Rebecca, I actually learned more from my peers and my colleagues in business school than the actual content of business school itself, because I had 37 different nationalities in my class with all different personalities, different stages of their career, a different conflict style. You imagine putting in like the Germans with the Americans, with the Brazilian and the Russian, and it was pretty hilarious and really challenging at times. And that was such a jumping off point for my career, to have that experience. And so, after business school, I took a job in public relations representing international brands from a PR perspective. And that allowed me to travel a bunch in the Western Hemisphere of the world. And that really kind of tipped it off right away, as far as incorporating my passion for travel and as a businesswoman.
Wow.
Great story. I want to be there. I want to be a fly on the wall in that business school, watching Kelly with 38 other countries in that room.
And just like, what was it like just interacting, starting conversations with the other students and just this natural curiosity that you had to find out what business in their country was like? What does that conversation even look like?
Yeah, so it usually, breaking the ice over tapas and some glasses of wine, as the Spanish do. But really just opening with a question, like, what are you celebrating this week? Whether it was Diwali or, a Latin American holiday. I hosted a big Thanksgiving feast, which no other country in the world obviously celebrates.
Mhm.
And so, having people, bring dishes over and just breaking bread with people, you realize we're all human. We have more in common than we actually realize. And that really removes the barrier when you're trying to make a connection with folks that are so different from you and can have such a different upbringing. And that really helped me to disarm, getting to know my classmates by just, having a meal together, being curious and asking them the questions. about where they come from and kind of what their belief system and why they're here. And but there was really challenging times. Like we had to do our business plans where you had to do group projects and the dynamics and people would clash. And you know, some people grew up in systems where they cheat their way through, and some people grew up in systems quite the opposite. So it was, I almost felt like if I can make it through business school and graduate and pass, like I can do international business because it can't get harder than the United Nations of 37 different nationalities here trying to get this business plan done.
Ooh,
Right.
I don't think there's anything that can replace travel, but this was more than travel. You were immersed in 37 other cultures in the business school, not just the Spanish and Barcelona, which of course is gorgeous. It's a sister city to my city in San Diego. I don't think there's anything that replaces that. And I can say that from firsthand experience, having been born and raised abroad in Switzerland. But what's interesting to me is this cultural differences that you pointed out, because each culture does have a different set of practices, business practices, and value system. And we're used to thinking in American terms. I know when I did a project and we had a lot of Koreans in the project, it was a completely different rather than Africans or Japanese or Russian. Each time was like a relearning for me, and you had it all in one big old room. Is there any story you can tell us about that time, about how you got through some of that and brought that project to the finish line?
Yeah, so you know, my group, I've had a Spaniard, a Peruvian, a Russian, myself, so very, very different backgrounds. And there was times where we got into an impasse and it looked like our project was not going to go through. And our literally the deans like sat us down and was like, "Hey, you need to get it together. You're you're not going to pass. Like you're going to fail, and that's not going to be a good look." And so what I did was just sit down and say, "Okay, how do we reset? How do we focus on each other's strengths instead of like focusing on what the other person isn't doing, whether it's verbal or non-verbally, and how they're communicating, if they're not pulling their weight?" And so we started to divide and conquer based on just looking at the truth and calling it what it is, and then trying to resource against it in a smart way. And when we did that and we were able to clear the air and call a spade, that's when we started really seeing movement in the right direction. And I think, you know, a lot of times us as American, we're so aloof and so not privy to how we're coming off to other cultures, or how arrogant or ignorant we're coming off to other cultures. And so the biggest thing I wanted to harness and how I showed up to my team members and also how I show up in business internationally is to come from a place of humility and empathy, and to have curiosity and ask questions. And a lot of times, what I've seen, you know, people are people. We just want to be listened to. We just want to be heard. We don't always want a solution. We don't always want an answer. We just want to be seen and heard. And with my group, a lot of the conflict came out of the fact that some people weren't feeling like they were being seen or heard in a certain way. And so it was a really smart lesson for me that then I really went back to time and time again in doing international business deals where I have.
Wow.
That's a
That-
mouthful.
That's amazing. It sounds like you were breaking the stereotype, but was breaking the stereotype an effect of the way you were showing up, or were you trying to intentionally break the stereotype of the US as, you know, arrogant, uncultured, all of that?
Yeah, so I think it was being honest about like the country I come from, and there's so much I love about our country, and there's also, you know, challenges, and how sometimes some Americans like show up when they travel abroad, and some people that have never been to America, that's their only impression of Americans. And so part of me was to own my truth and own their perception of my truth, and then to show them that they're wrong and to show them that it can be different, and I'm open and I'm curious to learn from them. And I respect the contrast that we hold space between the two of us. And that's why I love travel so much, is because travel, you're forced in the face of contrast, and you're forced to look inward and say, what do I agree or disagree with? What do I like or do I not like? And sometimes you'll find that you will change your belief system or augment something that you always believed that has challenged you due to that interaction, when you've traveled internationally. So I feel like travel is the best teacher.
I agree with you 100%. Travel is the best teacher. That may be the title of your book someday, as you tell your stewardess story and you expound and you're super successful and help millions and millions of people. I want to go back to something you said, Kelli, that even though we speak different languages, we have different value systems, we have different belief systems about how business is done based on our culture. There was one common denominator that you found, and that was that no matter who we are, we want to feel significant. We want to feel heard. We want to feel that we have some importance, or however you were, kind of framing that. And that gave me the chills as you were saying that, because that is a human need, no, that goes across all borders, so to speak, and slowing down that process enough to get in touch with that. And then the second thing that you said that I thought was beautiful was to see what resources you had. You saw each person as a resource, that they each brought something to the table. And recognizing that, I think, also builds that you're important to this project.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it also is just a reminder of how small I am and how small of a piece I am in the cog of this big wheel of franchising, of the world, of my generation. And it would behoove me to ask questions and get to know people and look out for the best of them, because they are actually my teachers.
Mhm. So I want to shift gears a little bit, because I am loving this passionate side of you, this curiosity side, this learning side. At what point did your passion begin to evolve into a, a purpose, where it was about social entrepreneurship, making a difference, all of those kinds of things? When did that begin to happen? Did it happen at 11? And when did it happen in business?
So the wanting to make an impact and give back and give to those that are disenfranchised and try to give them a leg up, and momentum, it was always my passion, as a young girl, and I didn't realize it. And my first big outward step of that, of claiming that and recognizing that, was the mission trip to Nicaragua and raising the money and building the house. Where it actually crossed over into business, happened when I started working, in franchising. I worked for a big franchisor, Chili's Grill and Bar. I had a mentor take a chance on me because I didn't come from the space, but I had international PR and sales background. And I was actually taking classes at Georgetown University, and I met one of the founders of this social franchise concept called Jibu, which is a safe drinking water franchise in Africa. Now they're currently across 12 countries, and I made a connection with them, and I just really was fascinated that they were introducing a business model where you can harness franchising that not only makes profits, but your impact is far greater than the profit making, but you're not limited to profit making. And so that was just an aha moment for me, because a lot of times, philanthropic work and giving to charity is wonderful. But the challenge with the NGO model or the nonprofit model is that you continue need to pour into it, pour into it, pour into it for it to survive. And the beauty of social enterprise or social entrepreneurship is that you've got a compelling business model that then is the growth engine and fueling of the nonprofit impact activities. So I love what they were doing. I kept in touch with them for a couple years, and one day they reached out and said, "Hey, we're ready to master franchise this. Can you come on board as our VP of franchise development?" So I packed my bags, put everything in storage. At the time, I'd just gone through a divorce, and I was like, I had nothing tying me down, and I bought a one-way ticket to Uganda, and I got a local roommate. I rode motorcycle, taxi, side saddle, and a dress through the mud every day to the office. And it was literally like, it was life changing, and it was absolutely incredible. I had no internet at home, no hot water, no, I mean, electricity was spotty, all these things, but this is a reality for so much of the world. And so that experience really completely changed my life. And I have been very involved in franchising based businesses that have that social impact. And to be honest, there's a lot of businesses in the United States that are social franchising, and that are being rolled out and that need a microphone, because they're doing amazing things. And there's a lot of things that we need to do in our own backyard.
That was such a great point that you had. That, sure, in the nonprofit world, like as we know, there are so many people that want to make an impact in our societals, yet at the same time, they don't have that profit-making engine, right? They're relying on other foundations or donations, government, wherever they're getting their funding from. But with a, social enterprise, right? They already have, I'm just trying to highlight this for the listener, like the difference where they already have some kind of system in place for that money-making operation to, I guess, sustain. Like, just for you to elaborate on that a little bit, because I really want our listeners to get a clear picture of that.
Absolutely. So another example is, I know a franchisee in the United States, and he owns a handful of, I think, zero res franchises, which is like carpet and upholstery cleaning. And he's grown it to multiple locations. And the only reason he is in that business is to fuel all of his efforts with his nonprofit. And he could fund his nonprofit. He doesn't need the money, but he wants the legacy to extend way beyond whether he got hit by a bus tomorrow or not. And the only way to ensure that you can see, ensure the continuity of your legacy through nonprofit work is to have that true commercial business that is driving EBITDA and driving profits to the bottom line. And then you can repurpose that to fuel any of the social agenda that you have, whether the efforts are a handout or if it's combination.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
and you're right, because it's become self-sustaining and profit creating. I think what I'm observing, Kelly, and tell me what you're observing, is more companies are getting this, that there needs to be more than just profit. The profit fuels other things, whether it's a cause or a charitable type of thing, or if it's simply putting someone in business to enhance their own lives. So I think more of us are starting to get the importance of profit plus impact.
Absolutely. And you even see it with the younger generations. Like, I talk to franchise candidates all day that are coming into inheriting a lot of money from boomers, and they don't want to work for the corporate slog, and they're looking at franchises, and they've got the education, maybe not the experience, but the first thing they ask when they're looking at franchises is how much do you contribute to philanthropic events? Are you involved with the Chamber of Commerce and, any uplift programs with, folks that are disenfranchised in your local community? Are you giving them opportunities? I mean, I get that question a lot. And the investor that's Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, don't underestimate the power, because they have the power of the purse strings, but they are making investment decisions that are socially based and also economically viable. They're looking at both equally. And I feel like, the silent generation, the baby boomer generation, they didn't have that luxury, right? They didn't have that luxury because it was about commerce and proving that out. And so it's just really neat to see the younger generations that are coming up. They just assume that that exists and part of the DNA of a business.
Wow. Yeah. Kelli, if you had, I mean, you have so many great messages and you have so much experience with people all over the world. If you had a message that you wanted to deliver, like something that was just short and succinct and powerful, what would that message be?
It's a great question. I would have to say, so in my time with in Africa, there is this Swahili proverb um, that comes from the Swahili language, the tribe in South Africa. And it's actually just one word, and the word is Ubuntu. Ubuntu. And what Ubuntu means in the Swahili language is I am because you are. And that's really, really powerful because who I am, why I exist, what I bring to the table, what I've been given, how many people have taken chances on me is because who you are and how you show up and how you exist where you're planted in the moment today. And that is truly like my life philosophy. And that's why travel has been my biggest gift and educator.
Ubuntu. That's amazing. That shows that everyone is connected.
Mm-hmm.
So true. We certainly are. Um, Talk about WellBiz. I see this passion, I see this purpose, a desire to make a difference, and others your age coming alongside expecting that in franchising. Talk about WellBiz because there's many different ways to make a difference, and WellBiz does a really good job of that. Can you address the health and beauty segment of franchising and how they make a difference?
Absolutely. WellBiz, so we're a portfolio company, as you mentioned, Rebecca. We focus on health, beauty. We target the affluent female customer, and she is looking to, after her long day at the office, or chasing around a bunch of kids at the house, or after a long travel layover red eye flight back into her hometown, she's looking to access beauty and wellness services that are going to make her feel confident, the best version of herself, and it's going to enable her to tackle her day. Whether it's eyelash extensions, I've just started getting them a couple months ago, and I can't stop. I can wake up out of bed with no makeup and tackle the day because I feel confident. Whether it's blowouts, women, a lot of times men don't get the concept, but both of you do. To go into one of our shops, get your hair shampooed, dried, and styled, and you're out in 45 minutes to head into the office for the day or go to that gala, or maybe just because you're trying to treat yourself. So there is a true impact, not just a financial impact, but there's a true impact on how confidence can boost and be a game changer in a woman's day. And so it's really fun to be a part of that and to be a part of that impact.
I gotta tell you, Kelli, I have a 14, almost 15-year-old granddaughter who now goes and gets her lashes done.
Hey, yeah.
And the truth is, even at that age, she's different. She's different. She's always been a little lacking in confidence, I guess would be. She's very extroverted and very playful, but there's always been a little bit of a self-consciousness about her. And I can see it seems so silly that something that tiny can make that much of a difference in this case in a young girl's life. So you're continuing this theme of profit and difference coming together. Tell us a little bit about the future for you and for WellBiz. What do you see is going to happen in the future?
Yeah, so we were just getting started. I'm sure you guys saw the franchise business review report that just came out that personal services are going to be outpacing in growth beyond QSR restaurants. That is the first time I've ever seen that statistic for beauty and wellness and personal services to overtake to the number one spot. And so we're looking in our sectors, there's like 8% CAGR growth year over year. So even though there's a ton of competition and a ton of offerings, there is pent up demand. So the sector is going to continue to grow. What I'm most excited about at WellBiz is that we think that the white space for us is about 4x, and that is just in the United States alone. And we have a we have a focus on recruiting franchisees that are either women, people of color, and minorities. So in the last 2 years, Rebecca, we've recruited 47% of our franchisees that we welcomed into the system fit that category. My goal is to get that over 50% and closer to that 75% so that people that are coming, that are customers of the services that we provide are franchisees, they are more representative of what we see in America and what true franchise ownership is. And it's all races, all sex, genders, religion, all the things you could think of. And so I'm really excited to drive that because that's also making a huge difference and focusing on leveling the playing field and equity for folks that want to come into business ownership through franchising.
Wow.
Another passion. I can see this passion going to be turning into a
Overflowing,
purpose. Yeah.
overflowing. So, Kelli, what is it like to launch a business in another country? Like, what does it feel like? What's the difference between launching a business here in the US and that feeling of launching one in another country?
So it's really exhilarating and it's terrifying. Um, Whatever critical path or timeline that you're looking at on your Gantt chart from all the tasks you need to do between signing a franchise agreement and opening, just like multiply that times 3 because it's going to take much longer getting through the red tape, things at the government or municipal level, cost of goods, sourcing, supply chain, the customer. I mean, there's so much complexity and it's just a massive undertaking. And also it's really exciting because you're truly a trailblazer. And that country may not even have an alternative. Whether it's, when casual dining first, broke onto the scene in the 90s international with, Chili's and TGI Fridays to now, like with our brand, Dry Bar, we are going to be launching in Saudi Arabia of all places, in Q3 of this year, where, women wear hijabs and the country is becoming more modernized, where women are going to have the right to show more of their hair and have their hair done. And even if they choose to wear a hijab, they can feel confident and beautiful, underneath that or within their homes. So it's really interesting to see how a product and a brand like Dry Bar can translate to a place where women do not show their hair.
Yeah. I think I read a statistic some time back that these women that do have to cover themselves based on certain local customs and religion, they actually buy more makeup than those of us that have ability to show our face. They just do it in private, right? They do it in private amongst the women or with their husbands, but they don't do it out in public. So it becomes a more intimate thing, a more about us intimately rather than the world and what I can show. So it's going to be interesting with Dry Bar to see how that evolves in Saudi Arabia. So that's exciting news. Okay, for my last question, unless Tracy has one, but for my last question, what about you? Are you going to become a pilot? Are you, hey, your mom said so. Are you gonna, create some social endeavor yourself? Are you gonna learn another language? What's your future about?
Well, my future currently, I'm building a beautiful family of my own. So I have been domestically focused in my scope and roles the last couple years because we have a daughter. Her name's Elliot. We call her Elle. She'll be 2 in June. And so focusing on growing a strong, resilient little girl, to also tell her that she can fly the plane. And professionally, I've got aspirations to continue to excel in the field of franchise sales and development and eventually become a CEO one day. So those are my aspirations. I also have aspirations to become a franchisee. I really see the power of the franchise model and how it has been a game changer to diversify your portfolio, to create generational wealth to pass down to your family, your kids. If you don't have kids, that may be fueling, right, the profits of a nonprofit cause that you have that's near and dear to your heart. So I have those aspirations. And, a wise woman told me once, Kelli, you can have everything in life, just not at the same time. So
Oh,
for right now, I'm focusing on my family and my budding career and amazing team at WellBiz. But I definitely feel like I'm just getting started and I really have big dreams. And it's all going to be within the four walls of this business model in this industry because it has given me one of the greatest gifts of my life.
wow.
I believe that's
Okay.
all going to happen, every last thing that you said. So tell us how our listener can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so feel free to look me up on LinkedIn. You can schedule an appointment right there to my calendar. You'll see it right under my photo. Private message me. I love to, I'm a connector in the industry. I love to put folks together. I'm also always up for mentoring, looking at, advisory board positions, just ways to collaborate. And especially the women out there, we're stronger together. This industry has started to be more and more inclusive of us, but we got to continue to pull up chairs to the table or build our own table. And I really saw that when I was at the multi-unit franchise conference last week, looking around and seeing who are the big hit investors and multi-unit operator owners, and I saw very few women.
Mhm.
So although we're making progress, there's still a lot to be made, and how we do that is we're stronger together and to achieve that together.
Yeah, well said. Well said, Kelli. Kelli, I want to thank you for coming today. You were very inspiring, and it's so fascinating to see how a very obvious passion fueled by loving parents has now intertwined with this purpose and a business model that allows all of the above: passion, purpose, profits, which you hit on too, and even that relational component where you can give and you can receive in either a mentor role, franchisee role, mentee role, whatever. It's definitely a relationship kind of uh, position that franchising takes. So thank you for joining us today. I really, really appreciate it.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation and I'm all like glowing and all fired up inside. So I love talking about these things and I just really appreciate you creating this space and the opportunity for me.
Perfect. Tracy, your final thoughts.
Rebecca, everything that you just said, plus how, I mean, Kelli, you're obviously the epitome of where passion meets purpose. I love that. With a whole other element of how that snowballs right into international impact. Just to see the impact that you're having all over the world, the lives that you're changing. I mean, when we talk about a ripple effect, like I'm trying to think of what's greater than a ripple effect, right? It's almost like throwing a continent in the middle of the ocean and seeing the ripples. That's the impact that you're having. So thank you for everything that you're doing for the world. Seriously.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Kelli. And to those of you listening in today to the Franchise Woman podcast, where passion and purpose collide, profits are made, and relationships forged. Make sure you like, comment, share Kelli's interview today. And of course, we'll see you next week on another episode.